27-year-old Emily Carter moved into a new rental home. She thought her biggest challenge would be paying bills and learning to live alone, but late at night, she started hearing things. Faint thumps, drawers sliding open above her head, her dog growling at shadows. She told herself it was animals or the house settling, until the night she pressed her ear to the attic door and heard breathing. When police finally searched, what they found wasn't just horrifying, it was downright dangerous. This video contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Emily Carter grew up in Oregon, the middle child of 3. Her parents divorced when she was 16, and she spent most of her teenage years helping her mum raise her younger siblings. Privacy was a luxury she never really had. By her mid-20s, Emily wanted independence more than anything. She had just left a short, messy marriage and was ready for a fresh start. When she landed a steady job as a dental assistant in Spokane, Washington, she saw it as her chance to finally start over and live on her own terms. She found a small rental house built in the 1950s. It wasn't perfect. Peeling paint, drafty windows, wood floors that creaked if you looked at them wrong, but it had its own charm about it. Tucked in on a dead-end street of a quiet and lovely neighborhood, it was exactly what she was looking for. The one part she didn't like was the attic. It had a narrow staircase, steep and shadowed, leading to a square wooden door in the ceiling. From the first day, the attic gave her a bad feeling. Stale air, cobwebs, the faint smell of dust, and once in a while something sharper, something that smelled like cigarette smoke. But Emily shrugged it off. Everyone has a part of their house they don't like. What she would later find there would haunt her for the rest of her life. The first week was peaceful. Emily unpacked boxes, strung lights across her bedroom walls, and set up a bed for a little terrier mix, Milo, by her nightstand. But soon, little things started happening. At night, when the house was quiet, Emily began hearing noises above her ceiling, a faint scratch, a shuffle, like something dragging slowly across wood. Once, what sounded like a soft thump directly above her bed. She laughed nervously to herself, whispering, "Mice, it has to be mice." Over the next week, she began noticing things. A jar of peanut butter left out on the counter when she swore she had put it away. A blanket she often curled up with while watching Netflix with a glass of wine was missing from the couch. Her phone charger turning up on the kitchen counter, even though she always left it plugged in beside her bed. And then, one night, as she brushed her teeth, she smelled it again. Cigarette smoke. It drifted faintly from the vent above her sink. Sharp, stale, and unmistakable. Emily didn't smoke. None of her neighbors smoked indoors. She stood frozen, toothbrush in hand, staring at the vent. The smell was coming from the attic. Emily told herself she was just stressed from work, forgetful, distracted. It was a life-changing move, so it made sense, but Milo seemed to sense something more. At night, he would suddenly sit up in bed, ears perked, staring at the ceiling. Sometimes he growled low, his eyes following the sound of footsteps above them. Emily tried to ignore it, but the fear was building. Weeks passed, and the noises became undeniable. These weren't rodents. They were footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth in the attic, directly above her bedroom. One night around 3 a.m., Emily jolted awake to the sound of a dresser drawer sliding open upstairs. Her heart pounded as she lay frozen, listening to something heavy scrape across the attic floor. Then silence, and then, faint but clear, the smell of cigarette smoke seeped down through the vent in her ceiling. Emily pulled the covers over her face and stared at the ceiling until dawn, telling herself over and over, "Old house, just an old house." But deep down, she knew someone was up there. Her breaking point came that morning. She was about to leave for work when she noticed something that made her stomach twist. The attic door, a square hatch at the top of the narrow staircase, was slightly ajar. She froze. She never left it open. She hardly ever went up there. Her legs felt like lead as she climbed the stairs. She pressed her ear against the door, listening intently, barely breathing. At first, nothing. Then, faint but clear, breathing, long, heavy, deliberate, followed by the soft exhale of smoke. The sharp scent of cigarettes rolled out from the crack in the door, and then a clear thump like something heavy shifted just inches away. Emily bolted down the stairs, grabbed her keys, and ran out the front door. From her car, with shaking hands, she called her best friend Sarah. "Don't go back inside," Sarah said immediately. "Wait, I'm coming." That evening, Sarah arrived. Together, the two women crept up the narrow staircase, Flashlights in hand, Emily's hand trembled as she pushed the attic door open. Cold, stale air rushed out, carrying with it the bitter stench of cigarette smoke. At first, their beams revealed only dust and boxes, but then, in the far corner, they froze. There was a sleeping bag spread out on the floor. Next to it, empty water bottles, food wrappers, cigarette butts. Emily's missing blanket was also folded neatly, and a small notebook. Emily picked it up with trembling hands and flipped through it. The handwriting was frantic, uneven. She showers for 12 minutes. She hums when she cooks. She looks sad when she eats alone. Emily dropped the notebook. Someone had been living above her, watching her, writing about her life. They both suddenly felt like they were being watched and ran outside, calling the police as soon as they made it out of the door. When officers arrived, they searched the attic with guns drawn. At first, nothing. Then, one officer noticed disturbed insulation near the eaves. He crouched low, shined his flashlight, and yelled out to his partner. "He's here!" Curled up in the shadows, eyes wide and unblinking, was a man. His clothes were filthy, his face gaunt, and the smell of stale cigarette smoke clung to him. When the light hit him, he hissed and lunged. The attic erupted in chaos, officers shouting. Emily screamed. Sarah pulled her down the stairs. The man scrambled for a gap in the beams, but one officer tackled him hard against the floor, pinning him. As they cuffed him, the man twisted his neck toward Emily. His lips curled into a strange smile, and in a rasping whisper, he said her name, Emily. At the station, police revealed the truth. The man in Emily's attic was Daniel Reed, 34 years old. And he wasn't just a stalker, he was a double murderer. In 2007, a 23-year-old woman in Tacoma was stabbed to death in her apartment. When detectives searched, they found food wrappers and cigarette butts in the attic above her unit. Someone had been living there, watching her. In 2010, a Spokane couple was attacked in their home. The husband was killed, the wife barely escaped with her life. Once again, investigators discovered a makeshift bed, wrappers, and a journal hidden in the attic. For years, Daniel drifted, and when Emily moved into a rental home in 2014, he found his next victim. The notebook recovered from Emily's attic was chilling. At first, it described her daily routines. She leaves at 7:50, always looks rushed. She wears the blue sweater when she's sad. She talks in her sleep. But toward the end, the entries shifted. The dog knows. She doesn't lock the kitchen window. This week, Daniel Reed was charged with stalking, trespassing, and attempted kidnapping. But when investigators ran his DNA, it matched the Tacoma and Spokane murders. Emily was horrified. The man breathing above her head at night wasn't just a stalker, he was a killer. Emily broke her lease immediately. She never set foot in the house again. To this day, she runs a fan at night, not for comfort, but because silence terrifies her. Silence reminds her of the attic, of the breathing, of the bitter smell of cigarette smoke seeping down through the vents, and of the man who whispered her name. Emily wasn't supposed to find out. Daniel Reed's journal made that clear. If she hadn't noticed that attic door cracked open, she might not be alive today. So I'll leave you with this. When was the last time you checked your attic? And if you did, are you sure you were alone? And that's the chilling true story of Emily Carter and the stalker in her attic. If you enjoyed this story and want more true creepy cases and dark mysteries, make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss an upload. I post new stories just like this one every week. Stories that prove sometimes the scariest things aren't out there in the woods, they're already inside your home.